I know how it feels when you're standing on a dock, scrolling through endless product listings, wondering if the next fish finder you spend a few $100s on will actually make a difference on the water. The fear of ending up with a flashy screen that never shows a bite, or a chart system you'll never understand, is real. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. That's why I'm taking the time to walk through the Lowrance HDS Pro12 the way a seasoned angler would, looking at the day-to-day experience, the hidden trade-offs, and whether the price tag really matches the benefits. First off, the HDS Pro12 lives in a niche that sits between the entry-level units you might see on a budget boat and the high-end, multi-screen rigs you only see on charter vessels. In the real world, you're not just buying a piece of glass. You're buying a hub that ties sonar, mapping, and even your smartphone into one workflow. Most buyers in this space are looking for a device that can replace a separate GPS chart plotter, a standalone sonar display, and the extra step of pulling out a phone for weather updates. The big question, then, is whether Lowrance has managed to fuse those roles without turning the system into something that's either too complicated or too expensive for the average weekend fisherman. What you get straight out of the box is a 12-inch SolarMax HD touchscreen that's noticeably brighter than the older LCD panels you see on older models. In practice, that brightness makes a difference the moment the sun climbs higher than 30 degrees. Most of the time, the display stays legible without you squinting or having to tilt the unit. The screen's response feels like you're using a tablet rather than a marine device. Tapping icons, dragging the sonar slice, and zooming in on a chart all happen instantly. That matters when you're trying to lock onto a school of fish that's moving quickly. The lag you experience with cheaper units can cost you a catch. Lowrance has built the HDS Pro12 around its ACTIVETARGET 2 and ACTIVETARGET 2 XL live sonar technology, which means you can see a live view of what's directly under the boat without waiting for a ping and wait cycle. In a day I spent on a lake with a moderate depth of 30 feet, the live sonar mode gave me a continuous, almost video-like feed of fish silhouettes. That same feed, when paired with the active imaging HD sonar, helped me differentiate a lone bass from a school of panfish because the imaging mode added detail to the structure of each target. The SIDESCAN capability, labeled FISHREVEAL, turned the side-looking sonar into a sort of underwater panoramic camera. On a river with a lot of cover, the SIDESCAN let me spot hidden structures like submerged logs and weed beds before I even dropped a line. Those moments are the ones that make the price feel justified. You're not just getting a dot on a depth reading. You're getting a visual context that guides where you actually cast. On the navigation side, the unit comes preloaded with CMAP Discover onboard charts. The charts cover a good portion of the U.S. inland waters and many coastal areas, and they're stored on the unit itself, which means you're not reliant on a phone data plan when you're out of range. I tested the route planning features on a weekend trip to a familiar lake, plotting a series of waypoints around a known base hotspot. The way the HDS Pro12 snapped to the nearest depth contour and highlighted potential fish holding structures made the planning feel less like guesswork. One practical strength here is the ability to overlay sonar data on the chart in real time. When the boat crossed a shoal, the chart updated instantly with a depth change, giving a visual cue that you were moving into a promising area. That said, the HDS Pro12 isn't without its practical drawbacks. The first and perhaps biggest gotcha is that the unit does not include a transducer. Lowrance ships the display and the software, but you still have to buy a compatible transducer separately, which can add a few $100s to the overall cost. If you already own a Lowrance transducer that matches the ACTIVETARGET 2 series, you can save a bit, but for first-time buyers it's a hidden expense that often catches people off guard. Second, the learning curve is steeper than you might expect. The touchscreen is intuitive, but the depth of features multiple sonar modes, chart layers, waypoint management means you'll need to spend a few hours in the dock or even run through the manual before you can confidently switch between live sonar and SIDESCAN on the fly. For someone who just wants a set-it-and-forget-it device, that extra time investment could feel like a burden. Finally, power consumption is something to keep in mind. The bright display and live sonar processing draw a noticeable amount of the boat's battery. So on smaller boats, you'll want to monitor the charge or run a dedicated power line to avoid